every build I do, um, I like to inspect the whole thing, but one of the most important things you're going to need to go over is the chassis, right? So now, if this is a body on frame sort of vehicle, you're best to take the body off of the frame. Doesn't need to be the first thing that you do, but it's going to happen at some point in your order of operations. Somewhere throughout the progress, you're going to pull those body, the whatever it is, the shell, the cab, the box. You're going to pull that off of the frame so that you can clean that frame, so that you can prepare that frame for brand new and proper installation of those body panels. The rubber body mounts are gone on anything that's 20 years old or 30 years old. Like any restoration that you're going to do, you need new, fresh body mounts. I have seen so many projects where that order of operations is ass backwards. And so for some reason, somebody's got their vehicle body worked and painted. Panels are all lined up. And then they're saying, "Oh yeah, well, I'll just change all those rubber mounts later." If you've ever built anything, ever at all, you know that something that should be square needs to be squared up. So if you build your body and you got all your lines and all your panels, I'm not saying that you can't change the mounts and get things back into position, but you're not going to change the mounts, get things back into position, and everything be correct or the way that you imagine maybe it should be. I'll tell you why. Something like rubber mounts that are under a rad cradle, let's say on a muscle car type build or an old truck. A quarter of an inch at the very front is going to change the back of your fender where that fender meets your doors. All of a sudden you're changing that line, right? Your line looks like this, and now you put a new mount in the front. Well, of course, it's going to be sitting taller. So now you've just messed up all your gaps. So what are you going to do? Well, now we'll readjust the fenders, right? Shim the fenders up a little bit. Well, now the whole front end is fucked. Your hood, your fenders, your front bumper. It's all made to go a certain way. And you do that after you replace mounts. Anyway, so order of operation is so important in these things. Let's move on. Your frame inspection, whether you have a unibody type shell or you have a full frame under there, you need to inspect it for corrosion. Where those body mounts go, almost always can be bad. Spots where leaf spring perches, connect you. All those spots, you're best to clean up quite well. You're going to want to upgrade structural integrity, maybe, right? Depends on what you're doing. Again, it all reflects back on that original purpose. So if you're going to be putting 400 horses under a car that was originally equipped with 2, you best think about the structural integrity of things, okay? Because not only is your vehicle probably over 30 years old by now, but it wasn't designed for that power, right? So if you've got to put in Caltrax or braces or whatever kinds of supports that you need, so be it, right? Again, reflecting on your purpose. Maybe you're doing a drift car or a rally car, and so you're going to be adding cages and you're going to be adding strut braces and right. So you're going to be taking care of all that structural integrity by adding things. In some cases, you're not drifting or rallying. You don't need a cage in there, but you do need to increase some of that structural rigidity of the vehicle. Anything from shackles to frame notch, right? You need to be thinking about what are you doing? Are you lifting it up? Are you putting it down? Are you running it at a stock type height? And so then that's going to run us into the suspension and wheels. Everybody has an idea of what kind of wheels they want on their vehicle right away. Big rim, whatever it be. Okay? And often the wheel tire package is bought, maybe, let's say, prematurely. Now, if your vehicle is all about stance and the way that it looks, that's okay. You do what you want. You build it however you want. But you need to identify and understand through some research the type of suspension setup that the vehicle has. And sometimes modifications such as putting a larger tire on there is going to completely change the geometry that has been set out by a team of engineers, likely much smarter than you. All right? So you want to put on drop spindles, or you want to set your tire out with some spacers. You're drastically changing the engineering and the geometry of your steering and suspension setup in the, say, front end, but in the rear too, if depending on what you've done. So you need to identify and understand if you've got solid axles, you got wishbones, you got links, leafs, coils. What have you got? How do they work? They're supposed to be mounted a certain way. When we're looking at older vehicles that are 30 years plus, by now we have seen, if a certain design had flaws and it's 30 years later, chances are we know about it now. Somebody knows about them now, and you can compensate for those flaws or the wear when you do your rebuild. Now, the consequences of altering OEM engineering by changing wheels or drop spindles, your ride quality, your alignment, and your handling could go all out the window. If you figure out what you're doing, you can make those things just that much better. If you're going to be doing track time, that's going to be of great value to you, right? To get your balance, the balance of the vehicle down, and to make sure that it's going to handle appropriately. Brakes are, lots of people talk about brakes, and brakes are easy. Anybody that's going to do a restoration or a rebuild in their garage at home is more than capable of taking care of their brakes. But I still don't know why it is so neglected. So whether you are going to do an upgrade and you're going to go bigger brakes, again, you got to understand what sort of tire wheel package you're going to have on there to make sure you're going to have clearance if you want to upgrade to larger size brakes. Newer rotors, right? Pads, piston assembly lines, booster valves, even your lever mechanism. Everything needs to be looked at. Not only because at some point you're going to have to either pass a tech inspection or a safety, but for your own safety, don't you think you should go through that system thoroughly to make sure that when you push on the brakes, your vehicle's going to come to a stop? Makes sense to me. Your body inspection, your initial body inspection before you get started on your project. You want to be aware of any corrosion or collision repairs that have taken place. I've pulled apart a lot of vehicles, and people are saying, oh yeah, all original. Well, it doesn't look original to me. I can see a great big seam here where a quarter skin has been put on. And so sometimes that's well hidden. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need to be a professional in the body realm in order to find some well-hidden repairs. A well-hidden repair doesn't mean it's a good repair. Okay, but good repairs do exist. Usually on these older things that I'm restoring, the vehicle might be damn near 50 years old. And so it's gone through 30 years of being repaired however it needed to be. And then it sat for more than 10 years somewhere. So chances are those repairs, even if they were good, aren't going to hold up over time. The products, materials, and resources that were available to body technicians 30 years ago just don't cut it if you compare them to what the products now are capable of, especially in regards to corrosion protection and keeping your surfaces from corroding. The body, you got to think about all the interactions between the body and the chassis, right? So if you're going to lower something, you're going to have some problems with wheel clearance. And all that stuff needs to be thought about, and you need to be thinking of the solutions before you encounter the problem. Obviously, the safety of things. Lighting and electrical. It's another one that I see neglected far too often. The older vehicles, they're grounding to body and stuff like that. Modern technology, we're running independent grounds for circuits. Everything's grounded properly. We're not relying on body connections and stuff like that. Although we have body connections and we need to make sure that they're good. Each circuit, say your tail lights and stuff like that, you're going to run your own brake line, your own negative ground wire, so that your ground wire and your power wire are the same length, same gauge. That is how modern electrical engineering proceeds. I've seen lots of old vehicles, you put in the older lights and they're dim, they're not bright. There's too much resistance. There's corrosion in the wires. Okay, if there's not breaks or bends or any other problems, there's still going to be corrosion in the wires. There's going to be extra resistance in those wires. So you run something like some bright headlights or some auxiliary things through an old ancient stock harness, and that wire is going to heat up. Does that sound fun? Does that sound dangerous? I'm sure you don't want to think about your vehicle on fire on the side of the road after you've completed a build or a restoration. So for a few $100s or a week of work or whatever it might be for you, go through that stuff, inspect it. Chances are you want to replace it. We'll talk about all the little secrets and tricks to cut corners, right? You don't need to buy a brand new wiring harness for your tail light. You can go to the junkyard and buy something that's 3 or 4 years old and rip the whole thing out, right? You got blinker lights and tail lights and backup lights and your lights for the license plate. Any of these things are already run in more modern wiring and modern technology of insulating these things and preparing a harness. Every build is going to require repairing and replacing. Don't think that you can just bolt on some nice new parts onto an old vehicle and you'll be ready to go. There's going to be stuff on that vehicle that all the regular wear and maintenance items are going to be neglected. Those are going to need to be looked at, and it adds up quick. So like I said, you go to a online shopping site like Napa or Piston Ring or Jegs, and you start ordering, adding things to your shopping cart so that you can see how quickly that adds up. And now, those might not be where you order those things. You might find cheaper prices or better products. But sitting down for an evening and doing that online shopping, filling a shopping cart, and then, reviewing it and going, wow, an hour worth of shopping and all these bearings and pads and rotors and bushings and everything's added up now. I'm at a few $1,000s. None of that stuff is even the things that I accounted for when I looked at it and I saw, oh, there's this dent in the door, and oh, it'll need this piece of glass, and oh, this trim piece is missing. Those things aren't going to add up nearly as much as all the regular functioning mechanical bits of an automobile. And if you don't fix it now, it's going to need to be fixed later on down the road. Do you want it in some garage, or do you want to be working on it after you've got nice, fresh paint and finish on it? Yeah, you can do that. It's not a problem. But I can tell you, you're probably better to get your chassis and your suspension and all your mechanical bits sorted out before you have any final paint on this vehicle. That's just my opinion, I guess, but we will continue on talking about some of these things, but I'm going to take a little break for now, and I'll try to focus in on some of those small things that are going to absolutely need to be replaced on any build, especially if it's 20 years old or older.